Hello everyone. In this video, I will be talking about how I set boundaries with real life examples. So as soon as you start talking about boundaries, people get triggered. People are like, that sounds so harsh, that sounds so mean. But I've actually found, like in my experience, that boundaries are the kindest thing that you can do for people in your life. So, in this video, I will be the millionth person to explain to you what boundaries are, why they're important, and give you examples from my life with people's names anonymized, of course. Um, so, give you examples to sort of share how I set boundaries. And I'm doing this, like, I'm sharing examples because I feel like people always think that boundaries need to be this big to do, big showdown. But it really is not that, like most of the time. Like maybe sometimes, of course, but most of the time it's not, it's really not that deep usually. So the caveat before we start is that this conversation is not about or for people in toxic, harmful, and damaging relationships. This is just general day to day relationship tensions that can arise. Like normal things that happen in friendships, normal things that happen in like romantic relationships, even in workplaces. And yeah, okay. So so the first thing I would talk about is like what are boundaries. So I haven't looked up the academic definition of boundaries because I want this video to be from experience. It's not that I know nothing about boundaries or I haven't read up on it or I have no education on it, but I'm not trying to give you an academic definition. But this is something that I have, I've learned for a few years and I have been practicing for a few years as well. And the reason why I am sharing with you what boundaries are, not from an academic point of view, but from experience, is that when people think about boundaries in theory, like what is often described academically can sound cold. But actually, my experience is that in real life, boundaries can be so loving for you and for the person receiving it, especially when that person wants the best for you. That's not to say that it, like, someone who wants the best for you will not feel maybe hurt by boundaries or something like that, but in general it can it's not it can feel like a loving thing. Boundaries don't always have to come from a mean place or from a place of bitterness. And in fact, when you feel bitterness in your heart, like that's usually because you haven't set the right boundaries. You haven't taken care of yourself the way that you really, should. Often, not always. Okay, so if you like this video, please subscribe and leave me a comment letting me know what resonates with you about the video. And also, I was thinking, if you have real life examples of where you think you need to set a boundary, please leave it in the comment with as much detail as possible. And I will be happy to make you a video explaining like how I would approach these situations for the first 3 comments like this. Because of course I can't do all of it, but I think for the first 3 comments, like if that's something that could be helpful, if not, like no stress at all. So, firstly, what are boundaries? So, to me, boundaries are about communicating with people around you, the people that are in your life, how you choose to live your life in a way that enables you to live with them in harmony. So that's a very broad definition, and I know that there's a lot more to boundaries, but to me, that has been the core of setting boundaries. So it's knowing for yourself that this is the kind of relationship that I I choose to live in or that I can thrive in, or this is the kind of environment that I can choose to live in. And anything that is the opposite of this kind of relationship or this kind of environment is not one where I thrive, or it's not one where I want to live or be. So so now let's talk about boundaries and like just like a few things about it. So the first thing is that boundaries are not about right or wrong. It's not about, oh, that person is wrong for doing this thing or I'm wrong for feeling this way. It really isn't. It's all it is about what is right for me. What is right for the person setting the boundary, right? What is good for me. That's all it's about. So when I say, when you're setting a boundary and say, what is good for me, what is good for you, right, does not have to be right, right? By the definition of right, like whoever defines right. But you know that it is good for you. And that's really what matters with setting boundaries. So when you're setting boundaries, you need to just forget about the value judgment. It's not about, oh, this is right, that's wrong. In many cases, these value judgments are so personal and it's based on life experiences. What one person thinks is right, another person thinks is wrong. So you may think that friends should always help their friends, but someone else could think that actually it's helpful to not help your friends. You need to give them the opportunity to help themselves and to learn how to help themselves, to teach themselves, to train themselves. You can argue for both sides, right? Like very easily. The point here is that you need to go into like boundaries or setting boundaries knowing that it's not about one person is right or another person is wrong. So the second thing about setting boundaries is it is so important to know who you are when you're setting boundaries. You cannot set boundaries appropriately without knowing who you are. This is because boundaries are always about you. Boundaries are about you. It's not about the other person. It's what you will and will not handle, what you will tolerate, what you will not tolerate, right? So there are many things that one person can tolerate in their life that another won't. But getting to know yourself and knowing where, some kind of behavior or something has become more harmful than good to you, or knowing where someone's behavior, even if it seems bad to someone else, does not really bother you at all, right? Like that's helpful for setting boundaries, right? The point here is that boundaries are not about controlling another person. You can't say to someone, oh, you cannot speak to me that way. Guess what? They can. They physically can. In general, anyone can do anything. Right? Like, so I'm going to give a very silly example, but I'm giving this example specifically because it is silly, right? And it's true, right? So you watching this right now, you can decide if you want, you can decide to become someone who walks on their hands. I guess unless you don't have hands. But, if you do have hands and you generally walk with your legs, you can decide today that what I want to do for the rest of my life is walk on my hands. Will people look at you weird? 100%. Is it efficient or better for you to walk on your hands? I don't think so. But if you decide that that's what you want to do and you learn how to walk on your hands and you start walking on your hands, like, can you start doing that? 100% you can, right? Like, I think that our hands can carry the weight of our bodies usually. Like, that's why people do handstands or, look, this is a silly example, like I said, but that's the point. Like, like at any point in time, you can do whatever you want. Like, okay, I'll give another example. I didn't mean to say this, but in my house, so I live alone. I love it. And it's the best thing, right? I love it so much. In my house, whenever I put away the dishes, when it comes to the spoons and the forks and the knives and all those things, you know how people always like separate them and like put them in separate, when I get there, I just like pour it all out from the dishwasher. I just like bring it out. I just like pour it into the thing and I move on with my life. Like, I can do that, right? Is it the best way to organize my kitchen? Probably not, but it's quicker and I choose to do that, right? So, sorry, let's come back to the point. The point is you can't control people. People can do whatever they want. They can speak to you however they want to. People can be selfish and people can treat you without kindness. This is of course not saying that it's good to be selfish or treating others with kindness is the best way to be. But when you're thinking about boundaries, it's important to remember that you can't control others. It's about you, right? What will you tolerate, right? If someone chooses to treat me without kindness, is that a space that I will continue to remain? Is that a place where what is within my control, I will stay in, or will I remove myself from that situation? That's sort of how boundaries are. And then the third thing about boundaries is that when you think about it, it's important to live honestly. Like, I feel like with setting boundaries, the importance of living honestly cannot be overemphasized, right? Because honesty and boundaries go hand in hand. When you live honestly, people know what to expect and they can relax around you. I was, I learned something on Instagram University, as I often do. And I haven't really looked it up, but I saw this thing where it was like, the free, like the highest and the highest frequency that we feel off of each other is authenticity. We can feel when people are being authentic. And like, it's so easy to believe that because, I mean, I don't know about you, but like, when you're around someone who is being inauthentic, you feel it. Like, even if you've never met them before, you can just feel like this person is being smarmy or whatever. Like, you're just like something's not right there, right? Like, we can often feel these things. You can have the gut feeling, right? And in many instances, people have a gut feeling and then they ignore it. But I feel like when you live honestly, you can trust your intuition more because you know what is right, right? Like, because you often live in what's right, you can learn to listen to yourself and know what feels right and what does not feel right. And then the last thing about boundaries, and before I start giving real life examples, is that with boundaries, like, it is obviously very important to communicate. You cannot set boundaries and not communicate them in appropriate ways with people. Like, and all these things that I'm sharing with you guys, like, I've only, like, in the last, let's say, 5-6 years, like, started living this way. So I know what it feels like to be on the other side, right? I know what it is to, like, have a boundary in my heart that no one else around me knows. And then when people cross it, I'm like, how could they? Well, they didn't know. Anyway, but you need to learn how to communicate the boundaries in appropriate ways because it's not fair to expect people to know your boundaries if you don't communicate it with them, if you don't share it with them. So now let's go to the examples. I feel like, so these examples are real life examples. And this is not me trying to put anyone on blast or like be like, and I've removed their names, but I feel like the actual people, like, if they listen to this, they will know that it's them. But the reason why I'm doing this is that, like I could think about abstract things and maybe that could be helpful, but I feel like these real life examples, specifically because for me, like, I'm someone who, I consider myself a recovered people pleaser. I would never have done this a few years ago, right? Like just a little bit of background about myself. Like, I did a PhD in economics, so I wasn't at university for many years of my life. And when you're at uni, you have a lot of time. And I feel like I found myself in a lot of relationships where I was willing to do so much more to keep the relationship and other people were not. And then I would, like, feel resentful when I had, like, overextended myself in relationships. Which I feel like when you feel resentful, like, that's on you. Like, I mean, not always, but like in general, like, I know that for me, that's on me because it's like, I chose to be in these relationships and I chose to continue to, like, you know, foster these relationships that were not right for me. But over the years, I sort of learned how to, like, trust myself and know that, oh, this does not feel right. And so, like, remove myself from situations that are not right. And when you remove yourself from situations that are not right, it opens up room for the ones that are right. So that's another thing. So the first example is Jeepers. And Jeepers is a friend that was a really close friend to me, and I consider, like, I still have nothing but love for them in my heart, like, just so much love for them in my heart. And they are, like, they used to be one of my closest friends, and we live in, but I noticed that we live in the same city, but we very rarely see each other. So I said to Jeepers, I said, and one more thing is, this is where, like, knowing yourself is important, because for me, physical presence, quality time, and things like that are, like, deeply important to me. And so I said to Jeepers, like it's important to me, like quality time together is important to me. So I say to them, quality time is so important to me. And I very rarely see you. Like I would love to see you more. Like, can we sort of make more plans? Just in general. And they say to me, oh, like we well, no, but we actually do see each other a lot. Like we see each other in group settings. So this was the first conversation we had in passing. And Jeepers was right. Like we did used to see each other a lot in group settings, but for me, like meeting in a group is not quality time. So yeah, so that was the first conversation we had, and then a few months later, I sort of brought it up again in a WhatsApp message, and I was like, yeah, we don't see each other that much. I tried to find the message, but I can't find it. And they said to me, and everything is correct, right? Because I know Jeepers, and Jeepers has like friends, lots and lots and lots and lots of friends, and I love that for them. I love that for them. Like, they're such an extrovert. They have so many friends. Like it's amazing. It wasn't to like always spend time together, but like I just felt like if we're friends, or at least for me, friendship with someone who lives in the same city as me involves us like physically seeing each other, at least once every 2 months, like for me at least. Anyway, so Jeepers was like, oh, like, I really understand what you're saying, but I actually have so many commitments and so many relationships that I think are really good that I want to, that I need to sort of commit to. And it means that I don't always have a lot of time to make plans regularly, or semi-regularly, or whatever that means. And I said, that's okay. Like that makes sense. And I totally understand. And so and I said to Jeep, and then they were asking like, oh, like what does that then mean for a relationship? Well, for me, it means that I won't put as much energy or effort into maintaining this relationship. And I will sort of leave that space and leave that energy open for another relationship where, I can actually get what I need and what I think is good for me. And so, as you can see, right, like, I mean, I don't think Jeepers is wrong at all. I don't think Jeepers has done anything wrong. Like, Jeepers, like, this is good for them. This is good to them. Like, this is the way that they choose to live their life. They choose to see a lot of different people every once in a while. They choose to have lots and lots and lots of relationships, and open themselves up to multiple relationships in their lives. But for me, and it's not that I don't have multiple relationships, but I think for me, like a close friendship involves like, I think before we had this conversation, Jeepers and I would see maybe once or twice every year, or once every 6 months. And then when you would see them, you would have to like recollect all the things that happened in your life, and then like, and for me that's so exhausting. And like there's something so beautiful about like truly living life together, and like someone actually being a part of your life. And for me, I don't think I can call someone a close friend who is not a part of my life, right? And so the point here is that Jeepers is not wrong, I'm not wrong. It's just we want different things, and we think different, want to live our lives in different ways. And so how did we live things is every once in a while I text Jeepers, I'm like, oh, how you going, blah blah blah, and they check on me, and but are we gonna be close friends? No. Do I consider them a close friend in my life? No. You know what I mean? So that's for me, like that way of being that way of having a relationship means that I have no resentment towards Jeepers, right? And what's been good is that since removing my energy from that relationship, it's really opened me up to other relationships where people do have time and space for a relationship in their life, right? Does this mean that I spend time with these people every single week? Of course not. Like we all have so much going on in our lives, but they make time for the relationship that we have, and I value that so much. Another example is a former friend, I would say Stan. So Stan, they are super flaky. And that's not like everyone in their life will say that about them. Like when you have conversations with people, like everyone in their life will say that about them. They would also say that about them. It's not, yeah. And if they say yes to something, it's really a toss up if they show up. Or even if they do, they'll be there extremely late. And a big part of it is that they have dealt with a chronic disease that limited their way of life for many, many, many years. But even though they had already healed from it at the time when we were still friends, that it was still limiting them because it was their way of life for a long time. But for me, my time is highly valuable because I'm someone who I consider myself an introvert. Like, I have limited energy, I have limited time, and I need lots and lots of alone time to like be okay in the world. Like, I just need time to rest and recover and to be myself. Like, that's part of why living alone has been like life changing for me, because there's just something about like being able to like hold space for your energy. Like, that has just been so good for me. And so, because I have limited time and limited energy, the relationship just always had lots of friction. But one of the things that happened is that we made plans, Stan and I and other people in a group. And when we made the plans, Stan said to me, oh, like, I feel like whenever we make plans, we always show up late. Like, like, can we please show up on time? And I completely agree, because like, I'm someone who can be to places on time. But because I know about Stan that they're very flaky, I intentionally don't spend effort or energy in getting to places on time. But when they said this, I was like 100% like, let's do it. And so for the plans, like, I like made sure to plan my time. I checked parking. Look, like, I organized everything. Like, it was a work day, so I had to like do all my work tasks and leave at the right time to be able to get there on time, with traffic considerations and everything. And I get there and I had to wait like 30 minutes to 45 minutes for Stan to arrive. And when they arrived, they're like, oh, hi, and I was like, oh, I just feel so, like, I feel so hurt that we made these plans and we specifically said that we were going to be here on time. And then, you're here like 45 minutes late. And, they apologized and everything. But I said to them, like, whenever we make plans, like, I don't think I will be there on time. Like, I will intentionally give you the time that you need, because I just don't think that you can make it to things on time. And they completely agreed with that. And then another time when we made plans, they were supposed to come over to my place, and we made plans for like 6 p.m. And, it wasn't to eat dinner together, but it was just to hang out. And then they showed up around like 9. And so what I did for this was I said, hey, like, thanks for showing up at 9, but I can only spend half an hour with you, because normally, like, if you had arrived on time, like, I would already have started my night routine. So I sort of spent half an hour with them, and I said, I have to start my night routine, and sort of, sent them off, and that was fine. And the reason I bring that up is that, like, what I would have done in the past is I would be like, oh, it's okay, and then they'll show up at 9, and then we'll hang out till 12, and then my whole next day is ruined because like I have work the next day. Like, I can hang out late, right? But I need to know personally. I need to know that that's what we're doing, because like I said, I have limited energy. I need to like organize my energy, basically, right? So the point of this is that because I know myself, because I know that this is who I am, I can say to Stan, like, whenever we make plans, I won't be there on time. I can say to Stan, if you show up at 9, we have to be done hanging out by 9:30. Like, you need to, be on your way and go home, So rather than cross my own boundaries, and rather than allow Stan to cross my boundaries and keep me up late and sort of toss me around, which is how I would have felt, to communicate with them that, like, this is it. Like, this is the amount of time that I'm willing to give, So those are the two examples. And as you can see, like, both those things avoid resentment, right? I don't feel resentful towards Stan. I don't feel resentful towards, what did I say? Jeepers. Thank you for listening. If any of this resonates with you, please leave a comment. I look forward to hearing from you.